Let's finish with baseball. Nebraska returns. They'll have 3 games against Washington, and then weather willing, they'll play a couple against Wichita next week. One,
Yeah,
two, and then
two.
they
Yeah.
go on the road. They play USC, who's pretty good. But first they play UCLA, right? They play UCLA, and they play Pepperdine, and they play USC. These are all pretty good teams. Um, is Nebraska baseball um, needs improvement, meets expectations, or is exceeding expectations at this moment? Why?
It's definitely not exceeding expectations. It's figuring itself out. I think that's where it is. The first stat that I go to is in the Big Ten era, Nebraska's had 5 regional teams outside of that 21 league only season. And the first time their combined record coming home for their first home game was 30 and 31. And these are all regional teams. So I think it's just a reminder that one, it's hard to be a cold weather team and go play these warm weather schools right away. Nebraska scheduled difficult games, Vanderbilt, LSU, series at Louisiana, and so forth. And they're just figuring things out. I mean, it's a great story when you have a freshman infielder in Devin Nunez who's batting leadoff and doing well, but it's also sort of an indictment on the offense that it's come to that, and the coaches have needed to tinker with so many different combinations that on a lineup full of seniors and proven guys, this is the one who's come in and been a spark. So like I think that's an example of something they're working through. They haven't figured out the rotation entirely. They gave Will Walsh a chance, and then they gave Jackson Brockett a chance on Sundays, and they both couldn't pitch into the third inning. So they're figuring things out there. And now they've got the Mason McConaughey injury, which potentially could cost him some starts. We'll see what the update on that is here this week, but that's a major thing for what they want to do moving forward too. So I mean, you just look at the history of Nebraska baseball in the Big Ten. The month of February is always difficult, and then you come home, and typically you get right. You play some midweek games against teams that you're more talented than. You're back at Haymarket where you've got 4 or 5 thousand people, and you start banking wins. So as I think as disappointed maybe as some people have been for those first 3 weekends, there hasn't been a loss in there that's been like, oh, that's going to weigh them down all season. Really, it's been a lot of missed opportunities. Hey, they could have beaten Grand Canyon. They could have won the series at Louisiana. They had that 5-0 lead on LSU. Those are missed opportunities. But if they just do what they've done in past years, I mean, they're still well on their way to contending in the league and being an at-large team. You got to figure some things out. And in this expanded Big Ten now, the league starts this weekend. A year ago, you're still 2 weeks away from these conference games rolling around. So Nebraska's working through some things. I think they still have the pieces to have the kind of season that they want, but definitely some missed opportunities early.
Quickly through March, they have 3 against Washington, 2 against Wichita State, 3 against UCLA, two at Pepperdine, 3 at USC, 1 at Kansas State, and 3 against Oregon State at home. As I add up those games, I think I get to 17 games, important games. A lot of games against West Coast teams. If you're trying to think about, and not a lot of like weak teams. There's not a bunch of junk in there. Um, what's a good record over those 17? All power conference teams except for Pepperdine, I think, and Pepperdine's pretty good.
Well, historically they are. They're not very good this year,
Ah,
but yeah, it's the old Pac-12 schedule for the next 4 weekends.
yeah.
That's who Nebraska's playing. It's yeah, they're the easternmost Pac-12 school here coming up, but uh I think USC and UCLA are a little better than we've seen. I'm going to be fascinated to see how traveling around the country affects them, the way it's affected some of the basketball teams, and just kind of what that's like, especially for a weekend instead of a 24-hour sort of deal. But 500 probably among
Yeah.
those weekend schools would be pretty good. You should win the series against Washington. They're resetting with a new coach and a whole bunch of new transfers. Their numbers aren't great. Oregon State obviously has been a national power for a while.
Yeah.
You hope to win one or two there, obviously, if you could. And then, again, UCLA and USC have been down for a couple of years. Each of them have. So if you can split on the road, so I would say about 500. Then you got to start taking care of your midweeks, and then you get into more of your traditional Big Ten schedule from there. But yeah, I think they're still in the stretch now, even with league play, where if you can, if you can tread water, if you can do a little better than that, then the second half of the season sets up for where you can start banking those wins and hope that what you've done early doesn't kind of hold you back in terms of your resume.
Yeah, because I mean, there's going to be some series where a sweep is expected. But of those 17 games that I just rattled off, if they go 10-7, again, people have a hard time hearing that. Like they don't like that. But if they're 14-13 coming out of March, they're not necessarily in bad shape. They're not in the shape they want to be to host a regional. If we're
No.
talking regional baseball, you probably better go 12, 13-4. But I don't know that this is a regional hosting team. The first 3 weeks tell me their pitching is going to have to elevate really quickly and get to where it was at the end of last season. You're right about Will Walsh. The start didn't go well. He pitched 4 great innings though against Sam Houston State. Jalen Worthley's has had a couple of good appearances. Didn't have a good inning against Sam Houston State. Um, the LSU thing was not unexpected, but that's unfortunate. You give up 11 runs in the last, what is it, 5 innings. You don't want that to happen. And so there's moments all over the place where I think that pitching staff just has to get a little better. I thought Kansas State kind of knocked them around too. And so this is you said it before the season, the pitching staff's what's got to really come through. And because that offense is missing a couple pieces from last year, and Gabe Swanson's just not off to the start. He's off to the start he had last year.
Mhm.
You want end of season Gabe Swanson as soon as you can get him.
Yeah, that's right. And the offense has to figure it out. They've been striking out way too much, and I mean, they're trying to see what sticks. I mean,
Right.
they've started, 12, 13 guys already, and that's not
Yep.
atypical necessarily, but it is a little atypical in the sense that they had a veteran lineup from last year, and some of those guys that were proven last year, some of those guys that they brought in as transfers, just haven't gotten off to the start that they want. But again, history says when the weather heats up, the offense tends to improve a little bit. If that can happen and the pitching can show the depth that it appears that it's had all off season, then Nebraska's the start that they've had has not changed the outlook for what this team can do in terms of at least playing in the postseason.
There you go. Evan's got it all with baseball. I appreciate that. That is all for our Pick Six podcast this week. We will be back next week on, I think, March 12th. So next Wednesday, we're going to talk about Matt Rule's long presser. On Tuesday, there'll be 3 players that talk. I'll be curious to see which players those are because we could have probably told you who they would have been last year. Ty Robinson, we knew who they would have been last year. Who will the 3 be this year? And if Dylan Rella should be one of those 3. But we will find out shortly enough. For Evan, I'm Sam. Thanks for listening.